All right, we are live. We have the infamous Casey Tagger of IAC with us. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you, Ian. We're missing Rob on this one, but I know some
Dad's out of town.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get him somehow spliced in on the back end. But we're heading into the playoffs. This is too big of a week to not have some sort of discussion about the happenings in the league, because we're down to the final couple weeks. I mean, we made it, Ian. I mean, I remember meeting with you. West Seattle, having a beer in August, just being like, is this really going to happen? Are we even going to attempt it? And you know what? I would have so regretted not doing this year, knowing what we know now and getting to where we are here. It really, it's the NFL made it work. And no, it's been a hell of a run.
100%. I mean, when we met, I was sure we were going to do it. And then talking to you and Jeff, it was like, oh no, there's some people who might, it might not happen. Yeah. And then we went through that big. I mean, I was this close to going on a jihad against Yusuf and kicking him out of the league. I was ready to go.
You were.
Yusuf, I love you, buddy, but I was close.
I remember I was on the phone with you in the middle of your tirade, and you said, Casey, hold on, Yusuf's calling me. And then I didn't hear from you for an hour, and I'm like, this is either not good, or I thought it was not good. And then I think we connected like an hour later, and you're like, okay, I heard him out. I think we're on the end. Yeah, 3 months later, here we are, week 14 in the SKFL playoffs. So it's good to be back.
Yep. Wild week 13.
Double header, man.
We need to build a tool to track what's going on. It's just too much.
Well, I know they had like Karnowski on the NBA. And we need to hire somebody to just come in on week 13 that, he's not part of the league, but he looks at the standings, he looks at the points, and we can stream him in on Sunday. That's just basically telling us in real time how things are looking, because it was, I mean, you were in a pretty safe spot, but you know me, I was with you on Sunday, and it was like, I needed Wade to do certain things. I needed Musa to do. There were 8 teams that I was trying to follow right now, and it just.
Oh, I was considering, potentially like trying to lose a game or something, like depending on who was going to make it. I just gave up even trying to figure it out.
Yeah, you just can't. Exactly. No, I the same thing. I was thinking that same thing with, which side of the bracket you want to be on, who you want to play first. And yeah, I mean, you look at, I always thought I was probably going to be the 6 seed going in, but it really could have easily been the 5. And I was kind of plotting the 6 based on who I thought was going to be the 3 seed. That didn't even turn out. So I agree. When you get to that point, it's just, you better not tempt the fantasy gods with anything like that. You just got to go out there and try and win the games.
Yep. Well, we're going to kick off with a, let's see, a preview of the toilet bowl. So let's see. Wait, we're going to do predictions first?
No, we'll do toilet bowl right off the bat. And then this is always one of my favorite segments, but it's kind of the what went wrong that we talk about on each team. So, let's not go into the head-to-head matchups yet of the toilet bowl. We'll kind of just talk about all 6 of the teams individually, kind of what happened in their season. And then, we can kind of talk about who we think might come out of here and get the 1 pick. I mean, that 1 pick is huge. I think you and I have both been able to use that 1 pick to our advantage.
It's amazing the leverage you have. You can trade down and
the 5th keeper. I mean, it gives you a 5th keeper. You just start looking at some of those teams where it's like, okay, Kinney's got Henry. Now he's got a 5th keeper option. You got Los that has 1s that he can use as a 5th keeper. Blake, who has Russell Wilson and Adams, can use it as a 5th keeper. So no, I think the last time this year I had it, but a couple years ago I remember working with you so that you could move up and just, I think, redraft Russell Wilson. And I was able to acquire, I think it was AJ Green, just from kind of sliding down 3 or 4 spots. So
I hate trading with the devil, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah, right. I know, but exactly.
So let's go. You want to go 6 to 1?
6 to 1.
The toilet bowl. So we'll start off with Los.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'll start with Los, and we've talked about him. He just, what went wrong for him really was just the way the schedule broke. I mean, when you look at his total points, his all-play record, you look at some of his losses, and it was like, this guy had a damn good team. He avoided injuries, and he just got bad breaks on the schedule gods. And, in a normal year, that's a playoff roster. He didn't miss on any of those guys. His 2nd-round pick was Keenan Allen, 3rd Rodgers, 4th Diggs. I mean, all those guys hit.
Diggs
for him is, he didn't have great keepers. I mean, Hunt and Drake were like an 8 and 9, and those aren't bad, but it's just not great. Phillip Rivers was a 5, and Rivers has been all right this year, but he just never had a stud as a keeper coming in, and I think that hurt him. If you look at his schedule, though, and I have this written down, he has 5 losses of 17 points or less, and 4 of them of 10 points or less. He had two 2-point losses. I mean, if you flip those 2-point losses and the 7-point loss that's 3 extra wins. And with his points, he's got the tiebreaker and he's in. So for Los, he has some bad breaks. I mean, nothing he did wrong as an owner other than, and I think Jeffrey mentioned this once, he had really bad luck streaming defenses. I looked at his stats with his defensive scoring, and he had negatives maybe 4 or 5 times this year. And he had single digits like in another 4 or 5 times this year. So you're talking 8 to 10 games where you're getting 9 and under on your defense. And then you have 5 games that are decided by 17 or less. That's the difference. But
and I don't know if he's learned. He still has Tennessee on his roster right now.
I know.
I mean, I kept waiting for Los to start winning and I fully expected him to make the playoffs. Like, if you talk to me in week 5, I would say, hey, Los is going to he's going to turn it on. His luck's going to change, but it just never seemed to happen. Chase Claypool was a great pickup. Or was he drafted?
He was not drafted. He picked him up pretty early. I think he even picked him up even before his big explosion game. Los is the Steeler guy. He's been hearing about Claypool all offseason. And so, he grabbed him on, early. I guess he had that big game. I think that was a Monday nighter, maybe. Yeah. So
week 2 he put up 32 points. Yeah,
and but look at that. It was on 3 catches, so you didn't really know. Pittsburgh was so deep at receiver that you were just like, okay, this is a James Washington type one big game, and now we won't see him for a while. But
that was an 88-yard touchdown. I mean, that's what got him all those points.
Exactly. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, just Los can definitely win the toilet bowl. I mean, like we said, he's got as many points as anybody. I think Los has got a shot to get hot, and win 3 here.
Yep. Well, better luck next year. Wait, now how do we get draft bitch? Is Los draft bitch?
Draft bitch right now. Los would be draft bitch as the 6. Now you can lose draft bitch if you win toilet bowl. That's always been a rule. If you can win toilet bowl as the worst record, you're not really considered draft bitch, and I think that would then fall to Kinney. So I know Kinney's got another rooting interest on the other side. He's definitely pro Wade, see if he can knock Los out of there and salvage himself from draft bitch.
Yeah, so speaking of Kinney's next, dark side number 5 in the toilet bowl. Let's see, where's his roster? So what went wrong for Kinney?
Yeah, I mean we
can always start with the number 2 second round draft pick, Kelsey. That's actually not too big of a deal here.
Yeah, I mean he's heard it all year, and so we barely need to bring it up. But he just left so much talent out there on the board when he takes Gronk. I mean there were Calvin Ridleys, there were Tyler Lockett's, there were big name receivers that he could have been playing week in and week out. And then, the Barkley injury obviously was what went wrong. I mean, it's hard right off the bat to lose that guy. But then some others, I mean, he was high on Minshew, and Minshew doesn't even keep the job there in Jacksonville. And just, he missed on some draft picks. It's out. Julian Edelman and A.J. Green were his 2 best receivers out of the draft. And those guys.
2014, I mean, we made that joke too, but his receivers were amazing in 2014.
And I think even had Alshon Jeffrey coming out of the draft. So there was one more.
Emmanuel Sanders as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Sanders is a funny guy because he kind of had a little bit of a hot stretch there during the Michael Thomas absence, but otherwise he was barely playable. He started really slow. It took the Thomas injury, and then they went to Taysom Hill, and you can't play Sanders at all. So you start looking at his roster, and he's got Henry off of the big trade, so I like that. But I mean, Cole Beasley's like his best player. So when that is a thing, there's a lot that went wrong, and most of it was just kind of coming out of the draft. I mean, he kept Drew Brees, and Drew Brees never looked elite this year. And then it's just Big Ben was probably one of his better picks because Big Ben was really, really solid, and he got him in the 7th. But, I think if you look back at his draft, picks 1 through 6, everybody underachieved. And, he had a couple close games there, but with his roster, it wasn't going to make a difference. He credit to him for getting to 5 wins. He kind of scrapped together some stuff late. So I'll give him credit. But he was, every time we talked, he was always one of those guys that, we were looking at next year and what he was going to do. And a lot of that was just the Barkley injury.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't draft Deontay. I mean, he's a huge Steelers fan, picked up Big Ben. I was surprised that he wasn't a little more aggressive in getting Deontay.
Especially, I mean, like we said, he was looking at receivers right around that range of picks 4 through 6. And I think you got Deontay in the 8th. So, yeah, so it would have been a reach at that point. But yeah, you would have thought he would have been all over Deontay as well.
Yeah. All right. Next in the what went wrong is the only Carl member to not make the playoffs. The shame of the Carl this year. Yusuf.
Yeah, Yusuf. And I was doing some research on kind of just the playoffs from the last 4 years, ever since the Jubilee. And there are 3 teams that have made the Final Four in all 4 years. You're one of them. Yep. Yusuf's one of them. And Cappers is actually an.
Really?
No, never. Hold on. I think I have that wrong. Cappers has made the championship game. I had it as 2 parts. There's 3 teams that have made the championship game twice in the last 4 years. It's you, Ian, and Cappers. But the only 2 teams that have made the Final Four in all 4 years since the Jubilee are you and Yusuf. So this is, Yusuf is, it took him, almost a decade to really kind of get SKFL relevant, but he's had a hell of a stretch over the last 5 to 7 years. So you kind of forget that. And he's not used to not being in the postseason. So this is kind of a shock to see him down there. For Yusuf, it's funny. Eazy-E got old and the Dak injury didn't help, but their offensive line was bad. And we never saw anything compared to what you thought out of Eazy-E.
Yeah, I mean, Eazy-E from like week 6 through his bye in 10, was brutal.
Brutal
for where he was drafted. Then he gets a 30 and then a 6. So he has not lived up to expectations.
Exactly. Another big loss for Yusuf was Odell Beckham. I mean, he took Odell, or he's made that. I mean, he drafted Evans and traded him for Odell. So you're talking, first, second round picks getting flopped at the trade, at the draft. And Odell just, he had 1 good game all season before he got injured. And the injury, I think, to Odell is kind of what made Yusuf think, okay, it's time for me to move on. The funny thing about Yusuf's team is he started out 4-2. And he ends 5-9. So he goes 1-7 down the stretch. So he was in it. And he actually was in it when he made that trade to get Barkley. And I think he just looked at his team and said, you know what? I'm not going to be good enough to win it with my receivers. Zeke doesn't look the same. Odell Beckham, I just lost now. I'm going to go and acquire Saquon Barkley. And there's no issue with that because he's still got a lot of talent on his team for moving into next year. And like we said, he's been one of those owners that have had a lot of success. One thing on Yusuf's team that I thought was really key is week 4 against Musa. He was the one of all these COVID delays that we had this year. He got hit with that Tennessee game that no one saw coming, but he loses Tannehill, Derrick Henry. 2 starters in a week 4 matchup where he's 2-1. Playing Musa is probably the favorite to get to 3-1. And now he had to start Brian Hoyer and Nick Mullins in that game because Drew Lock was hurt and Tannehill got the COVID games delayed. So I think that was just kind of the punch to the gut. Like, okay, I lost that game that I shouldn't have. Let's kind of look forward to next year.
Yeah, he's been struggling with quarterbacks all year. Is that right? Like,
yeah,
he started off with who did he start with? Tannehill and
Drew Lock.
Yeah.
Drew
Lock has not performed.
And then I think he had Trubisky to start the year too. And then Trubisky loses that job to Nick Foles, which I think happened at the exact same time that Drew Lock got hurt and Tannehill so he had one of those things where all his quarterbacks kind of just fell off all at once, and it resulted in kind of a losing streak for him. But Yusuf, one thing we know about him is he's fine running that game with quarterbacks. He'll wait on drafting a quarterback, and it's worked for the last 4 years. I think it finally caught up with him now. Yeah.
I wonder if there's an alternate history where he doesn't make those trades in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Was it 1 or 2? I forget.
He made 2. He made the big Kinney one, which got him Barkley, where he shipped Derrick Henry off. Mm-hmm. And Henry's had some big games recently, so you wonder if that would have made a difference. And then he had the Travis Kelce, Michael Thomas deal.
Kelce was huge after the trade.
Kelce's been huge. I know. No, I don't feel like Yusuf in the doubleheader actually put up a pretty good game, and he played me tough in week 12. So, I actually think that maybe if he had Kelce and Henry down the stretch, 2 or 3 of those games could have been turned to wins, and he'd be sitting at 7 or 8 wins.
Yep. All right, next on the list is Wade and the Rat Fuck Bastards, the team that RDR broke with a stat correction.
That's brutal.
I don't think Wade has Wade won a game since?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably not. I can't think of one. I know what it is.
I think he won one. I had one last week. I forget, but it hasn't been good for him.
Yeah, that's right. Because he would have played. I think Kenny beat him. I think Kenny beat him last week. It might have been week 12. No, he lost 12. No, I don't think it's happened.
No, he hasn't won since.
Yeah. So, I know that feeling when you lose a 1 or a 2-point game, just coming down to the final play on Monday night or something like that. To lose it on Thursday on a stat correction.
Thanksgiving morning. Happy Thanksgiving, Wade.
Morning. Like Thursday morning, that's the whole problem with stat corrections in this league is Thursday morning, you're already focused on the next week. The last thing on your mind is what happened, 3 days ago. And so you've got a game coming up in 2 hours that you're preparing for, and it's like, holy crap, the tie turned into a loss, and it's just brutal. But that's the story of Wade since he's been in the SCFL is that kind of luck.
Oh man, he has the worst luck.
He really has. I was surprised when I was doing that history. I kind of forgot that Wade finished 3rd last year. Wade actually had a pretty good year last year. Made it all the way to he was 3rd place. He beat Yusuf in the battle for Bucks.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
So for him, it's bad luck is one thing, but this year, and he's always been injuries for him. Galladay, Mixon, Godwin, Chark, always kind of banged up this year. Yeah. And Galladay and Mixon had weird injuries where they've been out for 2 months, and I think at the time of the injury, it felt like, okay, this is a 1 or 2 week thing. They're not going on the IR, so I can prepare for these guys coming back. And they never came back. And, Galladay's kind of proven that, that guy's a stud. Mixon, I looked up specifically, Mixon at the time of his injury was RB6. That's a top RB. And to lose him just derails you. It really does, especially when you're thinking it's only going to be maybe a week or 2 and it turns into 8 weeks.
Mixon and Galladay, you're running back 1 and wide receiver 1.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It's similar to what we talked about with Kenny and Barkley. Barkley's the bigger name of those guys, but in terms of what they meant to Wade's team, you're right. It's his RB1 and his receiver 1, and he had some depth there. But when you lose that top end talent, it's just so hard to consistently replace them. Can find a guy like Boyd that can fill in for Galladay for a week or 2, but when you're relying on that guy for 6 or 7 weeks. Just the law of large numbers will start to play itself out.
And Godwin too. Godwin gets hurt. I think he only missed a week or 2, but then AB comes in.
Yeah,
so that kills his value. It moves him from a borderline wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 3-4.
Yeah, and those kind of hits, like you don't realize how much of an effect it has until you're dealing with it on your team, and it's brutal. You're going from, expecting 25 to 30 points to, hoping for 15 to 20. And those 5 to 10 points are big. I know he's talked about, like, he missed a quarterback run in the 3rd round where, he was targeting an Aaron Rodgers and some of the other guys. And then he got stuck with Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones just really disappointed this year big time. Yeah, I mean, that Eagle game and that big run where he tripped him over.
Oh,
that's the only game I can even remember, and it was like the blooper of the season, and it was probably Daniel Jones' highlight of the year. Daniel Jones, was a guy that you knew if you had researched Jones, you knew his start of the schedule was going to be tough, and he had some really tough games out the gate. But
first 4 weeks, brutal.
And you look at that, and it's like he's got 4 or 5 games under 25, like from your quarterback, like. It just totally offset the start that Josh Allen was having because, Josh Allen just totally exceeded anybody's expectations. So if you would have just gotten anything legitimate from Daniel Jones, I think Wade would have gotten off to a hot start. But funny thing about Wade is, so he's 3-3, kind of at the deadline, loses 2 in a row to get to 3-5, then wins 2 in a row to get to 5-5, then has the stat correction deal that happens, and then doesn't win again. So just a streaky team for Wade. So, it'll be interesting. He had the Chark, Godwin, Galladay thing everybody kind of talked about where he had 3 legit receivers all in double-digit keeper rounds. And it didn't work this year for him. And now everybody moves up 3. So I'm curious to see kind of what happens with him kind of moving forward because, Mixon and Jacobs were kind of his 2 studs. And I would say both of those guys kind of underachieved for him. And I don't know if you're going back to the well there. Just a lot of his guys either got injured or disappointed. And, other than Josh Allen, I would say that's the only guy that, kind of did better than what you expected off of that team. And
Josh Allen overperformed. I mean, the thing that surprised me most on his team with Daniel Jones, you look at his rookie year, he was bad some games, but he was also awesome some games.
Yeah.
So he either hit and won you a week, or you were sad you started him.
Yeah.
This year, I don't think he has a game over 50.
No.
And maybe one game above 40.
Yes.
So he went from like someone who could win you a week to someone who is not going to win you a week and will probably lose you a week.
Exactly.
His 2 quarterback when Josh Allen was hot, and in the first 4 weeks, I kept thinking, with Danny Dimes having the tough start, it was like, well, this could turn around. He could have 2 solid starting quarterbacks, but that never came to fruition.
Exactly. It never happened. And then that was right when all of his guys started to get injured. And it's like, that was the story of his year. I will say, for him right now that, one of the big moves of the pickup artist was Taysom Hill at this point. Taysom Hill is, a top 8 quarterback right now, and Wade falls into that. So, if you're looking back at kind of what went right for Wade, that acquisition was absolutely huge. It was at a time when everybody expected Jameis Winston to be the guy. Winston gets waiver claimed. Taysom Hill doesn't even get waiver claimed, and Wade's able to pick him up on free agency. That's huge because, it kept him in games. It allowed him late to replace Danny Dimes altogether. And it gives him a piece of like, okay, this is one of those quarterbacks that, if you're looking into next year, Josh Allen, Taysom Hill is intriguing.
Yeah. I drafted Taysom Hill. And, I was kicking myself.
Didn't you? He's a 17. I forgot about that. Damn. Yeah. You're 100% right. You did do that. Yeah. Wow. That's great. That's breaking news. I totally had forgotten about that, but you're right. Damn, that's a monster.
Yeah.
Let's hope Drew Brees comes back for 1 more year now, Wade.
Well, I'm curious. We could talk about this later, but what's Taysom Hill's future in the NFL? Well, if he's with Sean Payton, I can see it turning into something maybe next year.
Yes.
But I'm not sold on that yet.
I think if you look back at the last 2 off seasons of Taysom Hill, I think you and I were the 2 owners of him during the off season as a potential keeper. So, me and you know kind of what he could be. I remember all off season thinking Drew Brees might walk away. Then he had that big thing where he was, defending the flag and all that shit. And I was like, Drew Brees is in trouble. I thought there was about a 1 week stretch in the summer where I thought Taysom Hill was going to be my keeper. So, yeah, it's intriguing. You're definitely considering Taysom Hill as long as he's there with Sean Payton. And I was even thinking that when I thought he was a keeper 10. If he's a keeper 17, that's a no-brainer.
That's easy. Money in the bank.
Exactly.
All right, now to the number 2 seed in the toilet bowl, Rockford.
And, of the 4 right now, I think I said Los could win it. these next two, I think, can also win it. I mean, just to kind of get ahead of ourselves, I think Rockford, Blake, and Los are the three teams that have the best shot of winning this thing. So for Rob, he had two really just brutal losses. He had the Jacoby Myers game against Jeffrey, where it ended up being a 13, 14-point win for Jeffrey, but Myers needed a 28 or something, and he throws up a 40. Like, Rob's going into that thinking that's a win for sure. And then he had a game against Blake. I think you and I were here. It was the Ravens-Patriot game where he had the Baltimore D, and the Patriots beat the Ravens. And Morrow lost to Blake by 2 points.
I think he needed what, like 5 points?
Yeah, exactly. So it was little like that. And we were just giving the game to Rob, and it was like, holy shit, it was as good as Cam Newton looked all year. They were able to run the football, and they put up 20-plus points. And, when you have the Ravens defense against the Patriots, you're expecting double digits, and that's all it was going to take, and he didn't get it. And, those two games would be enough for Morrow to be in the postseason. So you've got two just brutal losses for Rob that basically knocked him out.
And I will say, my win against him, I feel like I stole that. Cooper Kupp, I don't know, he barely caught a ball.
That's true.
And I end up winning by less than 10. So
that
was another steal there.
That's right. He exactly. For him, a couple, we always talk about how he really won that trade with the Kelsey for Michael Thomas, because you're getting Kelsey and Thomas. The funny thing about it is the week he makes the trade, he wins. He plays me and wins. He then loses 4 straight games after that trade. And then he doesn't win again until the doubleheader. So it's one of those things where we always talk about don't trade with Yusuf because bad things happen. And we see it there. Even on the surface, when it looks like Rob Morrow wins that trade, he would have been better. He wouldn't have been better off with Michael Thomas, but he lost all 4 of those games. So there's some weird voodoo juju whenever you kind of make a deal with Yusuf. We've seen that before. In terms of kind of things that went wrong for him, Tyler Lockett really underperformed. He had that huge game early on where he had was it a 70 or something like that?
Against Arizona, right?
Yeah. And then after that game, he only had 1 game above 20.
Yeah.
And, it turned into the DK Metcalf show.
Yeah. Lockett has been when he was drafted and a couple years in, I kind of saw him as potentially not becoming an AB type, but in the same AB junior.
Yeah.
Okay? Especially with the meld that he was getting with Russell Wilson. Because I saw how Russell Wilson connected with Doug Baldwin, right?
And that was the comp. Exactly.
Yeah. And so that was going to be Tyler Lockett. But with DK breaking out now and Russell Wilson having a lot of eyes for DK, this puts Lockett's fantasy kind of dominance in jeopeody.
Yeah, and you're a Tyler Lockett owner recently, so you've seen that.
I love Tyler.
I agree. I think of one of the early pods, I remember Morrow asking me, would you rather have, Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf? And at that time, it might have been coming off of that, the 47-point game. And it was close, and I'm always going to go with just the upside guy, which even then was still DK Metcalf. Right now, it's a no-brainer. Tyler Lockett went from, low-end receiver 1, high-end receiver 2 to a receiver 3, even in that offense. And you're right. It's because just, first read, second read is DK Metcalf. And, Tyler,
I wonder how much of that is down to the Seattle offense, which has kind of gone south over the past 5 or 6 games.
And that's true, too. And we always knew that Russell Wilson, Russell Wilson was on pace for 70 touchdowns after the first month. We knew that.
MVP. Yeah.
But, you look at Tyler, Lockett's yards, he's not even going above 50 yards. It's just, I can't even think of the last time he got a touchdown. He just had that connection with Russell Wilson that I didn't think would go away overnight, but it really looks like it has. Michael Thomas was another Rob Morrow, kind of like Los, had really bad keepers, when you're keeping Austin Hooper. Bad keepers. And, and then so Michael Thomas, at least what he had over Los was he had a stud coming in. He had Michael Thomas, and Michael Thomas just fell off the face of the earth with the injury, and then with Tate. He's just not even, a borderline receiver 2-3.
It's amazing how far he's fallen. I mean, he was by consensus #1, dynasty #1, redraft #1 wide receiver, and just a stud, period, right? And then after this year, it's like, well, where does he go next year? Probably back of the first round.
I don't think. Well, it comes down to Drew Brees versus Taysom. I mean,
I guess so, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if he's a free agent, but he's definitely movable. I mean, we've heard rumblings of him not being in New Orleans next year. So
I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints move on from him. There's been enough rumblings about it.
I agree. Well, especially if they kind of just dedicate that offense to Taysom Hill, and this is what we're going to do. We don't need to pay a receiver like Michael Thomas because we're just not going to throw it more than 25 times a game. But I mean, right off the top of my head, I could easily name 5 receivers I'd take over him, and I bet you I could come up with 8 to 10.
Yeah, a lot of risk. If he moves teams, how do you feel about wide receivers moving teams?
Yeah, I go back and forth. It actually never really bothered me, and then I got burned by it.
Odell.
I got burned by it with Odell last year. So then I kind of came back around and kind of bought into it. Well, then this year it kind of had me lower on some guys like Hopkins and Diggs, and those guys hit with it. So I think talent will always kind of come out. Michael Thomas is a funny guy. I've owned Thomas, and I've been a Breeze and Saints guy. I don't necessarily know how good of a receiver he is and how much of it was just that perfect marriage with Drew Brees.
You're playing with Breeze and Sean Payton.
Yeah.
They know
how to get the ball. And I mean, you go back and start picturing some of Michael Thomas's stats and highlights and play. He's not going and winning jump balls. He's not like just, shaking people with his move. He's just open. And it's like that quick slant that is like, boom, a 17-yard pass. And Breeze would just hit him on 3 straight plays. And you would look up and it was halfway through the first quarter and he's got 4 catches for 72 yards. And and I just don't know if a ton of offenses operate that way.
Yep.
Give Morrow some credit. The James Robinson pick was huge. I mean, that's arguable. I mean, it probably is the pickup of the year. I mean,
I think so. I've been kicking myself for not making that. I needed that big time this year.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking about it, but James Robinson is so much of an unknown. No one really knew.
It was before the draft, and it was after Fournette, but you still had that weird thing where they had like that Armstead and that
and the guy from Tampa.
Yeah.
Ogunbowale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you didn't really know how it was going to shake out, and you thought,
and Divine Bigbo.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember. And the thing is, I don't think you had the opportunity to get him because he went through waivers, and you would have been low on waivers.
I didn't put a claim in.
Yeah, and I was 1 on waivers and didn't put a claim on him. So I'm kicking myself because that guy was, I mean, just based on the usage alone. And I remember thinking, okay, it's the Jags, it's Minshew, like this offense.
Well, they also had Chris Thompson. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's like, why do you want to get an undrafted grinder?
Yes, like on a team that is going to be scoring 13 points a game. I know, but no, I mean, he was out there. I mean, his usage, I think I've seen the stats. It's unparalleled to like anybody in the last 25 years. He gets 95% of the running back snaps.
Yeah.
He just doesn't come off the field.
Yep. And then JTT just hasn't panned out this year. Like he may be turning the corner now, but that's a huge disappointment for the running backs here.
Yeah, definitely. I can't figure out if he passes the eye test to me, but I agree. He had a stretch for about a month where it was like, what is going on? And I wanted to blame the coaching staff and the play calling and them moving in and out of him but then I was like, I watched him and I'm like, he must just not be good. But you're right. He has started to pop a little bit recently. Funny too. David Montgomery's a guy that like whenever you watch him, he doesn't look good and you never really feel good starting him. And I think I looked him up. He's like a top 12 running back right now in terms of scoring. And it's just
the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's turned it on.
Yes, he has.
Efficiency is not his game. He reminds maybe a little bit like Melvin Gordon, a few years back where he's getting all the touches. Is he getting touchdowns now? Not even a ton of touchdowns.
Not even a ton of touchdowns. Not even a ton of catches with Cohen out. I think for him, I mean, I just think when you had a guy like Nick Foles back there, I mean, just the statue, that's not going to help David Montgomery. I think Trubisky has helped him. I mean, if you look at kind of his big games, it feels like most of them are with Trubisky.
Yeah. All right. Casey, just a heads up, I have a hard stop in 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we'll do the picks later on. Let's just roll through on Blake's team right now because I think he's probably the favorite, right?
I didn't have Blake as my Blake
okay,
was not my
I went Los. I had Los in the poll with the post. Blake, it's hard to say what went wrong for him because he got as hot as anybody. And I think down the stretch, there were people that were like, we don't want to see him in the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, I was scared of him.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was really that's actually why I was considering maybe pulling a starter so I wouldn't have to play Blake. But I don't know. I looked through his roster yesterday, and Russell Wilson slowed down. Herbert,
maybe hit a really ball, but he's still scary.
Yeah. And Chubb is of course amazing.
Yeah.
But then you got Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. It's like you kind of don't want them, right?
No,
especially not both on your roster. So what are you going to do there? Naheem Hines, total crapshoot. Devin Singletary, Buffalo's not running the ball at all.
So, it looked like they finally phased Moss out completely last week after the Moss fumble. So maybe Singletary, but you don't feel good starting them, that's for sure. Yeah. And then it's just Adams, really. But Adams scares the crap out of you.
He does, but I guess thinking about like who can win the toilet bowl, I'm not as scared of his team after it's kind of too hit or miss. I think he caught fire because he's got some good players here, right?
Yeah.
But I just I can't see it sustaining, I guess. That's why he's not a favorite for me.
His team is similar to yours, where it's that when Herbert and Wilson are hitting, that he can put up big scores. But right now you're kind of catching them playing down a level. So that's why he needs those guys to get hot. He missed the playoffs by 150 points this year. He, had the same record as me, and it was just points that basically kept him out. And if you remember back, he had that week 5 or week 6 game against me where he only put up 99 points. Remember that?
I remember that. I was amazed anyone could do that.
He had no quarterbacks that week. And that basically, he's not going to make up 150 in that game, but that's just a huge, that's 75, 80 points that he lost that week. And so when you're thinking about just missing the playoffs by 150, I think that week was huge. He had a couple really close games. We talked about the Morrow win. He had 2 games where he won by less than 3 points. So he actually won some games that were close. But I agree. His team, before he got Chubb playing, his running backs just weren't good. And you nailed both of it. Singletary and Gordon were just low-end RB2s. And that's all he was running with were those 2 running backs.
Oh, I know all about RB2s. That's all I've had all year.
You would love an RB2 on your team right now.
Please. So who are your favorites? You like Blake?
Right now, I'd pull up the bracket again. I'd have Blake and Los as the 2 favorites, but they might be on the same side.
Let's see.
No, okay. They'll get there. I've got Blake and Los playing for the championship here in week 15 of the Toilet Bowl.
And it's funny. I didn't look at the brackets when I thought of my favorite. My favorites are Los and Wade, who are playing this week.
Right out the gate. That's a big matchup.
Yeah. All right, so we'll see how they do. See if they can see how our predictions go. You want to do a quick rundown of our playoff games?
Yeah. Let's do it. Can you do it? Can you fit us in?
We got 3 minutes. I want to get it in. I can be a couple minutes late to my meeting.
Okay, let's go for it, man.
So let me see. I'll pull it up.
I'll do your game. You do mine.
Okay, you go first. Here's my game.
So, right now, let me grab my notes. I've got, the story of RDR right now is injuries. CMC, Moore, and Julio. Those are your 3 best guys, non-quarterbacks, and they're out. And 4, 5, it's not like these guys were injured and you knew it. These guys 5 days ago, you expected to have all 3 of them. And just such a dagger. Julio Jones was a weird season. Julio Jones missed 4 games this year, but never like back-to-back. It was always just a random game. So it's like, is he getting old? I don't know. But your team is going to come down to how far your quarterbacks can carry you. You need 100-plus minimum. You probably need 110, 120 from those 2 guys to have a shot. Chad Hansen in the starting lineup in a playoff game is – who? Like, what? Nobody's even heard of Chad Hansen as of a week and a half ago.
I never heard of him.
I thought you had Scott Hansen in there just for like an omen to the red zone.
How long you been working on that material?
I will say Gallman, we talked about pickup of the year and James Robinson. Shit, Gallman might be number 2. Wayne Gallman is the 6th rated running back since week 7 when you picked him up. 6. I mean, that's an RB1. I mean, a top-end RB1. So, hell, and you're talking to the guy who dropped him. So, I mean, I'm kicking myself for that. I did not.
Dropped him for Carlos Hyde.
Yeah. And so, you know, I mean, there was some – I always thought Devontae Freeman would come back, even though I never loved Freeman. But, you know, we've seen Wayne Gallman try and get that job before, and he's never looked good. He's been damn tough. So, Gallman's big. You know, the Chase Edmonds explosion just never happened this year that we thought might, and it just hasn't. But it's still there and it's still intriguing. But that Arizona offense has just been bizarre over the last month, and so I think that's holding him back. You still are missing a starter, and you know it's maybe Mark Andrews, maybe it's Tony Pollard, depending on Zeke.
It's going to be Andrews against Cleveland.
I think it has to be, and you're going to ride Lamar. So we've always said that your team, when it hits, it's because Lamar and Andrews have a big game. So I think that's it. You know, Deontay and even losing Julio Jones, you've got Deontay and Allen Robinson, who are legit receivers that can take on Randy's. So it's a shot. I think the key to the matchup, though, is going to be your 49ers defense against Alex Smith and McKissick. I mean, he's got 2 starters going against your defense. I mean, depending on how that game goes, it's going to decide a lot. For Cappers, he's got 2 quarterbacks making their SKFL debut this week. Alex Smith has not started a game yet this year. No. Wow. I was surprised. I thought maybe he has not started, and then Jalen Hurts is making his starting debut. So I don't know if that's ever happened in the playoffs where you've got 2 guys that have never started an SKFL game going off in the playoffs, but that's going to be big. How big is that Cam Newton bench, though, from yesterday? I mean, if he was sitting on an 8 with Cam Newton, you'd feel really good right now. And, you know, Alex Smith doesn't scare you, but he's going to get more than 8 points. So,
yeah. I would love that.
Genius move by Randy. You know, for him, it's like, holy crap, he's got Antonio Brown and Robbie Anderson on the bench. Like, I mean, I would kill for either of those 2 guys.
I know.
Jeez, and he's benching both of them. So it's like, it just shows. You talked about it. He's got the best receivers in the history of the SKFL. And so it's going to be tough. I mean, I've got Randy kind of winning big. I mean, the big key would be like Kamara. Like, he just hasn't really been – he's been averaging under 20 with Taysom Hill, so you need a bad Kamara. The funny thing about the running back matchup right now is he gets the lotto ticket with McKissick. I could make the case that McKissick is the highest scoring running back of these 4 going. And it's like,
yeah,
right? I mean, he's probably going to get a 20. If McKissick gets a 20, I think Randy wins that no problem. And without Antonio Gibson, I just don't see how he doesn't. You know, he's got 2 decent defenses that he can, you know, decide between. You said that you like streaming against the Broncos. Well, he might pull that on you right now. So that's scary. And then, you know, you always look at Randy's team and you think Schultz a weakness. Schultz is a top 10 tight end. He's only averaging 4 points less than Hawkinson and Andrews. So it's like he's not losing anything there from that guy. So no, Randy's top to bottom way better. The injury blow for you is just too much to overcome unless you can outscore his. You need Jalen Hurts to really struggle, and you need Alex Smith to be, you know, those 2 guys can't combine for more than 50, 60 points, or you won't have a shot.
Yeah. I don't have much to add except for the pain in my heart that I'm feeling, thinking that all I got to do is make the playoffs. I'll have CMC. DJ Moore will be off his bye.
Yep.
I mean, I could just losing one of them, I'd be fine.
You'd be fine. You'd be fine.
All 3.
Because honestly, all week you kind of were preparing for McCaffrey and Moore. That didn't sound good as of Tuesday.
Julio, I thought would be fine. He is a sports car who like takes care of his body. Like he has to, but he makes it work. He knows how.
He played 95% of the snaps last week, and so I was like, okay, because he's been banged up, but he always, you know, finds a way to go out there. But then I looked it up, and he's missed 4 just games this year, and it's one of those that you don't see coming. It's not like he goes down and gets injured the week before. It's like all of a sudden on Tuesday at practice, you hear that he's limited, and then it's like Thursday he still hasn't practiced, and then on Friday they rule him out, and it's like, Those are the tough guys to lose, especially a guy like Julio, because he can win you a week with a 40 or a 50.
Yeah.
And when I saw that news this morning, it was one of the first things I saw this morning. I'm like, wow, they actually ruled him out. I wasn't expecting the Julio. And I agree. I think just Julio in your lineup makes this a lot closer. I think you could have survived the 2 Panthers.
Yep. I mean, honestly, the decision I'm trying to make is, do I go for like the whammy? Do I put a Jalen Guyton in?
Yeah, exactly.
How do I feel about my chances? And
I get it
going over this next couple of days.
As the underdog, sometimes you feel like that's the way. I mean, sometimes it's like, no, I just got to play my best lineup. But I agree. In the postseason, I look at it a little bit differently. It's, you aren't going to win with a Hansen or somebody like that giving you a 12 or a 15. You need one guy to catch a whammy, and you're looking at matchups. You're looking at high scorers. You're looking at who might be able to get exploited downfield. So I don't hate that reasoning at all. It's what I'm looking at with my receivers right now, losing, Will Fuller and freaking Mims. I mean, I'm chasing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting both those guys to be playing as of a couple weeks ago. So, no, it'll be tough. I mean, the one thing I'll say is just last week you were going without your Panthers and you were still able to throw up a 250. So that's the thing about your team. You can still throw up 250s without the Panthers, but the Julio thing's big. I mean, you need to somehow replace Julio with a guy that can get you a 20.
I need the Ravens last year. So, like you said, Lamar Andrews, that'd be key.
That's it.
All right. I'm going to have to end it here, Casey. We're going to have to do you another time. I've got to run off to my day job.
Sounds good. I knew you had it at 4. So, no, good catching up, Ian. If you free up around 5 or 5:30, we can do it again. We'll finish that last game. We'll talk about one of those poll questions about the kind of next year looking at. We can throw that in there as well.
Sounds great, man.
All right, Ian. Good luck.
All right.
Man. Stay healthy. Stay as healthy as you can, man. Try and get healthy.
Seriously.
Survive the week, I guess, is what it is. All right, Ian.